Brilliant. Hello, Brian. Hello, Leah.
Hi there, Haley. Hi,
Hi,
Leah.
Haley. Hi, Brian. Hi.
So today we have my very special friend, Leah Hill, from just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. And as we were talking about, Leah was with me in Mexico last week as sort of my first guest on the retreats. So we've just seen each other, which is a massive gift. Leah was actually my first hug in 6 months.
Oh, wow.
So it was a
I,
wonderful, wonderful, wonderful gift.
I might have been your last.
No, you might have been.
Yeah.
Isn't that random? My last and my first.
Wow.
Wow, time flies.
Yep.
So, as we were talking about, Leah, what we want to do here is really talk about sort of our journey through life, and we do focus on the hero's journey, which we consider that path towards really owning our unique light. And Brian and I came together because we have similar yet very different paths, and I think you and I came together because we have similar and not so different paths.
Right.
So to get it started, I met Leah, I don't remember when, 4 years ago? About 4 years ago, through a mutual friend who was actually my teacher at the time, my spiritual teacher at the time. And she invited Leah and I up to this cabin in Maine just for sort of like a divine feminine sisterhood little retreat. Leah and I had never met before, so we basically drove up. There was Leah, and that's how we met. And just somehow I remember our walk that we went on. We were just like, do you want to go for a walk? And we just ended up chatting so freely and really going deep into our lives on this walk. And I remember sort of the smell of the pine trees
Me too. I
as
remember
we were walking. And it was very different for me because usually I'm quite guarded when I meet, back then at least, when I meet people, I'm quite guarded. But with Leah, it was just so easy. And it really was the beginning of this wonderful friendship. We've explored different countries together. We've done Glastonbury in the UK together. We've done Sedona, New Mexico, Grand Canyon together. We've now done Mexico together. And we have a list of other countries that we're going to do together. And what we like to do in these places is to really experience them from an energetic perspective without everybody else telling us what we should be experiencing. So we have a lot of fun breaking rules and just really defining things in the way that we feel them. And then we get to discuss it and really go through an adventure in terms of what we're seeing, what we're feeling. And also, Leah has been an instrumental part in my journey in helping me stay sane, guiding me. She does wonderful healing sessions. And I honestly say with great confidence today that I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for Leah. She has
Oh,
saved my butt several times.
that's great. That's quite an endorsement, Leah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Haley. I appreciate that so much.
Le-
And I keep saying all our adventures just get better and better.
Leah, you identify as an intuitive and as a vessel through which souls who have transitioned express themselves to the people who come to work with you.
Right.
And also, you're a firm believer in what's called sacred geometry.
Yes.
So before we get to uh, all of that, one of the things that I'm most interested in is, what have you sacrificed to be where you are today?
Oh, what a wonderful question. I guess the easiest way to answer that is to say that I have sacrificed who I thought I should become. That I, through my many earlier years and like many young people, I had lots of ideas about, by this age, I was going to be doing this and,
Uh-huh.
or I was going to be in this line of work, or I was going to be this person. And what I had to do was really let that go, which was not a simple journey, or maybe it was simple but not easy. But it was really, it's more than just about ego. It's more like of who I wanted myself to be, or how I wanted other people to think of me. But it was really for me a lesson in surrender, a lesson in really surrendering to the truth of who I am and really accepting myself. And as I get older, I find that the more that I do that, then the more I attract people into my life, such as Hayley or yourself, that I can, connect with and work with and enjoy life with.
Did your parents and friends support you identifying yourself in these spiritual ways?
Later, I would say later, not right away. So I mostly hid my abilities when I was a child because I was very much in fear. I was in fear of what I might experience. I was in fear of what, things that would scare me, things that I would see. And at that time, I did not have anyone to, to talk it through with. I didn't have anyone to say, this is what's happening and what do I do and how do I handle this? So that was a while. When I finally was able to accept myself and then also communicate who I am with my family and my close friends, everybody deals with it differently. Some people were skeptical, some people were immediately supportive, some people were afraid, that I had joined some cult or something. It's like everybody deals with it differently, but and that was the journey for me. But it really was important for me, no matter what, was to really just not deny who I am anymore.
At what age did that actually happen?
Oh, it started happening in my late 20s, and it probably took, probably a good 10 years until I really became comfortable with who I am. So,
Okay.
yeah, so I would say it was probably a long journey. Yeah.
And before, you mentioned you started the journey in your 20s, but was there a moment in your life prior to that where you were kind of like, okay, something's different about the way I'm experiencing life compared to other people?
Yes, I think if I go way back into like early childhood memories, I would see things that other people weren't seeing. I would see energy. I would have lots of nightmare dreams. I would have lots of dreams that scared me or that overwhelmed me. So I knew just from, hanging out with my friends that they weren't experiencing or talking about these things. So I knew I was different from a very young age. And then as I got older, the experiences actually got stronger and clearer to the point where I just really couldn't deny it anymore. And I think the one, like the moment I say that I actually like woke up, that I consider it my awakening, was I had a friend had suggested I read a book by Esther Hicks, the Jerry and Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks book called Ask and It Is Forgiven, Ask and It Is Given. And she was reading this book and she said, you know what, this is awesome. And when I'm done with it, I'll let you borrow it. And I just said, no, I'm going to go buy it right now. Like, don't even bother sharing it with me because and I did. And that book, I have to say, really woke me up because it was the first time I realized that I could actually control my life. I just thought up until then, everything that happened to me just happened to me. It was like, when good things happened, I was happy. And when bad things happened, I wasn't happy, but I didn't know that there was any way that I could control that or create my life.
What in the book told you that? What message did you get, Leah, that said that you could control your life?
Well, it is a lot of the essence of the book, but it was probably that the phrase was, you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. And that was what really shook me. I was like, you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. Like, if I focus on what I don't want in my life, yeah, it keeps coming back to me in one version or another, or one person or another, like this pattern of this difficulty of my life over and over again. So when I finally got that, like really embodied it as my truth, then my life changed very much. Everything changed. My beliefs changed, my perceptions, how I saw myself, how I saw the world, everything changed because of that. And that led to a very exciting journey, a spiritual journey.
Leah, Brian and I often talk about religion, and you and I have had conversations about religion, and I consider you somebody that is deeply connected to the Christian figures, many, not just Christian figures, but many what we consider Christian figures, like Jesus, like Mother Mary. What is your belief now in terms of those figures and religion, and considering how you grew up? Did you grow up with religion?
I did, yes. I grew up in a traditional Catholic family, so going to church every day, going to communion, confirmation, all of that. So I had a lot of that exposure, but it wasn't until I was an adult till I really read the Bible, till I really started asking questions. I just felt like it was, just something to do. It was something I was supposed to do, to participate in this way. But I realized growing up that it really I wasn't participating with my heart. I was participating with my head. I was thinking about it and thinking about what was being taught. And now that I have, opened up to this communication with angels, ascended masters, spirit guides on the other side, I have an incredibly personal connection now that I never had before. And not only with, I'll use the word God or creator or the all, whatever, word it translates to you, but not only with that, but also with Jesus and Mother Mary, and even Mary Magdalene, that, I was taught was, a prostitute and a very small figure in the Bible, and now my connection, even with Mary Magdalene, is so much stronger and clearer to have revealed to me a truth that I would not have learned any other way. And so I feel like I have a very personal relationship with all three of them.
Mm-hmm.
and in many different ways, that they show up in my life, and have showed up in my life at different points in my life, that was like turning points in my life that I could not have predicted, or I couldn't have known on my own, but they were there, and they continue to be with me in very close ways. So I consider them the ascended masters. I communicate with them. I feel their energy, and I receive intuitive guidance and direction from them as well.
So I was thinking about this earlier, Leah. Is there a consistent message that comes through you from the ascended masters about the purpose of life?
Yes, I would say it always comes down to the purpose of life is to experience love in our physical dimension. So when we are in our non-physical, I believe, our spirit form, we are love. There's no duality of the love and the hate and the good and the bad and the right and the wrong. I believe that we transcend that. But here we are in this physical dimension, living with the polarities and the dualities every day, day in and day out. And the consistent message that I feel and what I hear in many different ways through my clients is it's always, coming back to the power of love, which is more powerful than anything we could imagine or anything we could do that might scare us or harm us or what we think of it as. And so I think that message is about, really being here in this physical reality, knowing that we are a spirit being of love. And how do we live like that? How do we express that in our world?
Mm-hmm. And do you get any pushback from family growing, your Catholic family? I mean, I also am product of 16 years of Catholic education, and actually Ray and I spent 20 years in the Boston area. So
okay. So you're familiar.
You and I have
our weather patterns too.
A lot of connection. Well, I'm in Florida now, so actually, But the thing that occurs to me, Hayley, for you too, when you and Leah are together and walking through the woods, you're speaking the same language, and no one is really challenging you on this idea of people, higher powers speaking through you. You go out for drinks with friends. If you do that, do you talk openly about? Well, Mary Magdalene just told me that. Or do you feel that in a world that uses very different vocabulary and has very different ideas about good and bad and the devil and God, etc., that it's better to keep a lower profile?
Do you want to go first, Leah?
Sure. I would say that because I feel connected with spirit, I always ask for the right timing. So it might be that I'm out somewhere and I'm talking about something totally different with a group of people, but someone would say, hey, I saw this class, or I went to this group and there was a medium there and she gave me this message, and wow, do you know anything about, has anybody experienced that before? And then I see that as opportunity or a divine synchronicity, I call them, not a coincidence, a divine synchronicity. And I say, oh, well, actually, that's what I do. That's me as well. And so I do it like that. I'm not sometimes what we call the ambush medium, the type of person that's like in your face. I'm not going up to people in the supermarket and saying, I see your dead brother around you or something. I don't want someone doing that to me. So I don't do that.
And he wants you to pay him back.
Right? Exactly. They want to do that. So, and that's what I consider part of my responsibility of having this gift. I feel like, I'm guided. If there's a message that I need to get to someone, it will happen. But if I don't need to, or I can always set the intention that they get the message through something else. So maybe that person's, picture of their brother, falls over, or they look at it and then they go, oh, and they get the message through the photo. So I which has happened as well. So I think of it that way as, I just show up and let life be what it is. And if that's way things are guided or steered towards, then that's what I do. But I did commit to not like having to prove anything. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to prove myself or prove how incredibly, spiritual I am or anything. I don't want that, because I don't want any of that energy. I'm just like, here I am. This is it. So sorry, Hayley, go ahead. And
I think, to add on to that, it is showing up, it is reading the room too. And then remembering the purpose is like, first, I need to walk the talk. So if I'm going to be talking about my purpose is to return to love, I need to be in love first. So then comes in reading the room, where, sometimes people just, if you listen to them, if you look at their body language, you can tell very early on if they're very set in their opinions. So I wouldn't even bring it up with them. And if they say something that is completely contradictory to my belief, I won't say anything, because I just don't think that there's any space. I will just keep quiet and just keep working on myself to be like, okay, even though you're getting triggered because somebody's contradicting your belief, you can still open your heart, you can still be in love. But then there's other opportunities, to Leah's other point, when you're around different circles and that opening comes in and somebody says to you, don't you do something like this? I'm more than happy to talk about it. But also to checking the ego, because it has happened a couple of times where people want to put you on the spot and people want you to perform and think that it's a show. And that's where I kind of try and make sure that I'm not going into that energy of a show and tell versus, this should be the same conversation. If I was in finance, it should be the same energy. So it is, again, I think, it is different. It's not something that everybody talks about every day. And it's not something that, on a regular day, you're going to go to lunch and be around somebody that can read energy. So it's a very interesting path to navigate. Earlier on, I think there's a bit of a burden to it because you are getting all of this information, and then to learn the appropriate and necessary time to do something with that information is a big learning. And I think that's one of the sort of very often overlooked part of the path. And I think it's the same, any hero's journey, as you open up to a different way of being, learning about the timing, learning about appropriate necessary behavior and actions different from what you were doing is sometimes the hardest part.
Are you able to make, Leah, a living from the work that you do? Hayley mentioned autism before our conversation began. Are you also working in that area?
I do actually. Yes. I do my work, my healing work and my spiritual work part-time. And then I also, I work as an autism program coordinator and in an administrative capacity. So I primarily work with adults on the spectrum that are 18 and older. And so I don't do like the behavioral consultation or anything in person. I do it more like programming perspective and service providing perspective. And I guess I would say a special affinity, I guess, for people on the spectrum. And I guess that comes from the understanding of, I know what it's like to be, when I was a child, to feel feelings and not be able to express them, or to see things and not be able to express them, and to experience things and not be able to express them. And that's, sometimes what people with autism experience is that they whatever they're feeling, whether it has anything to do with spirituality or not, whatever their feelings are, if they can't express it and can't communicate it, it's extremely difficult. It's very lonely place to be, and it's withdrawing. You just kind of continue to withdraw within yourself. So so that's my personal perspective of it, or connection with it. But I love what I do in all of the work that I do, whether it's my spiritual work or my other hat, which is not spiritual, but it's a way for me to connect with people.
And you actually wrote a book about a boy with autism.
I did. I wrote a book called The Society of Sylphs. So those are the elemental beings of the air, the SYLPH, the Sylphs. And so the boy in the book, named Eddie, is a young boy with autism who is like what I described. You read his thoughts. You read what he would say if he could speak. So even though he's nonverbal, he has to find other ways to express himself. He has to find ways to communicate, to get his needs met, and to cope with life and to get through life. So yes, that's what the book is about. And the sylph, that some people consider like a fairy of the air, or like typically an elemental being of the air, also needs to learn how to be herself, how to develop her own self, her own her purpose in life, but also how to be in her society as well with all the other sylphs. So the two of them meet and they help solve a crime together too. There's a crime story in there too. But it's a learning journey about that, about how to do that, how to be yourself but still be in society, because we can't just be a hermit and go in the cave and have our world be that bubble. We still have to be in the world and be a part of it as well. And it's sometimes tricky.
Go ahead. No, Hayley.
That is a huge part of Brian and I's many conversations that Brian and I have, is how do you own your unique light when it is different from society's perception of what it should be? And in your experience with autism and the different sort of levels and generations of autism, do you think that if society was more open, that we would be more open to understanding autism and maybe giving autism a little bit more credit, or do you think that it is a disability that deserves to be sort of sheltered?
I think that the first part of what you said, that I feel like as we learn more and more about autism in general, and as we just in general meet more people with autism, that you realize that it's such a huge spectrum of abilities, of differences, of uniqueness that you can't just get from reading a book. I mean, Dr. Temple Grandin is a great example of a woman who has autism, and she is able to verbalize, what it's like and what she thinks. But a lot of people can't do that. But she is able to educate people. She's got TEDx talks and dozens of books that she's published about, what it's like. In fact, she says the world needs all kinds of minds. If we all thought the same way, we wouldn't be successful as in our world at all. That the way she thinks is differently, or the way she perceives is probably differently than maybe I would, but it doesn't mean it's less than. She says it's just different, but not less. And I think that's where we're going, and with the population of people with autism increasing every year. I think the CDC says now it's one in less than 60 births now in the United States, which is incredible considering back in the 1980s it was 1 in 10,000. So it really is a tremendous expansion of diagnoses, which can be attributed to better diagnosis, but not that much. That's a lot. That's a lot more than
what do you believe is the cause for the increased number of births of children with autism?
So my personal belief is that it has something to do with our genetics. And the reason I say that is because I meet a lot of families. I feel like a lot of the traits or the symptoms have been maybe in families or are passed down through the generations, but the parents or grandparents were never diagnosed, or they were misdiagnosed. A lot of times, children who we would now diagnose with autism would have been considered as having childhood schizophrenia. It was just or just something they couldn't diagnose. And so my question then is, why now, right? Why now all of a sudden is there this, incredible population growing? And my belief is that something has been turned off or turned on in the genes. So where maybe our parents or our grandparents maybe changed something in, we talk about the pollution, the chemicals we use, the stuff that's in our food, maybe things that we were immune to that wouldn't have affected us are now affecting this population, this generation, in a different way. So that's my personal belief. There isn't any known cause. There's no scientific cause for autism at this time, and there's no cure either. It's a lifetime developmental disability is what it's considered, a disability technically, but some people say it's just a different ability.
Different ability. And I have a lot of fun talking about people's unique superpowers. And I was doing some research a couple years ago about corporate training and culture, and I stumbled upon a company in Denmark. This was probably a good 6 years ago. A company in Denmark had hired a huge population of autistic adults and put them into what we would consider automation jobs, where they had very simple, like, follow this. And the performance was skyrocketing. Amazing performance. That SAP, the huge technology company, started their own program of hiring autistic people to do these very sort of automated roles that, other people might be completely bored with or have high turnover. Right. Autistic people are showing that they have an amazing ability to get things done. But also what they found is that their ability to improve things, to look at something and just change it without questioning or just go ahead and do something, created such innovation. So I think it's interesting, and we could go on and on about, why they're coming, why it's getting better now, or why so many autistic people are coming in now that we're recognizing it. Where is it taking us from a, collective consciousness?
Right.
Do you two believe that it's more likely that somebody who is a medium is female than male?
I've not seen that.
You haven't seen? I tend to see it more as maybe women tend to, explore it more, maybe. Not necessarily that there are more women than men who are mediums, but maybe more that actually are comfortable with it or comfortable expressing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think in the world that I see, for now especially, I see that it's the same, just as many men as women, across all of it. So yeah.
So Hayley, of the men who you see as there's many men, what percentage of them are gay?
Probably at least 50%. At least 50% of them are gay on the men's side. But even on the women's side too, there's some that are lesbian on the women's side too. Well, LGBTQ. I'm not entirely sure that they're lesbian, but they are not choosing hetero, or they're not checking hetero. So
I as Hayley knows, I believe, Leah, that gay men, and I really am talking about men who have known that they had same-sex attraction since they were little, that biologically, studies show our brains are much closer to the feminine brain than the heterosexual male brain, and that we're able to tap the feminine more easily than a heterosexual male will. And so I was curious. That's why what generated my question is, there are lots and lots of people out there today who are having spiritual experiences and who are connecting with higher powers, and I think that some people are gifted in helping them understand what's going on because of the vision they have, and I think part of it is biological. Do you have any thoughts on that? Where do our gifts come from?
Well, I guess in what it sounds like what you're talking about is the left brain, right brain, maybe. That when because I work in a world where I have to switch back and forth left brain, right brain a lot. And so I guess I could say I kind of trained myself to do that. So when I am in my, I put my intuitive hat on, like I'm going to work, I'm here, I'm present to work with a client and to do this session, this intuitive guidance session, that I'm kind of switching over. I'm opening up the energies in my right brain. And I probably couldn't do math in my head very well at that moment. I noticed that for myself, that I'm like, wow, when I'm really in it, I probably couldn't add 2 and 2 together when I'm really in my spiritual space. And maybe I'm wondering if that's kind of what you're experiencing or what you're thinking, is that if what you're saying is true, that men who have known, from that young age that they are gay, that they prefer men, that they have access maybe to the right brain where we get our intuitive awareness and our intuitive awakening more easily.
What do you think, Hayley?
I'm trying not to go down the rabbit hole here and keep it simple. I think that I do believe the superpower of the LGBTQ community is their ability to move between the brains without such a switch. So for me, and it sounds like for you too, Leah, there's a very conscious, now I'm going into that other side of the brain. I think part of that superpower is that it's a constant, they're kind of flowing back and forth a bit easily, not so concentrated, I guess. I think they also, in that, it gives them an ability to really allow themselves to show themselves more openly. Because I think when we're, I should just use my words then, when I'm switching between left brain and right brain, I'm very conscious of it, and I'm very conscious of, you know, what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. But when I look at and compare myself to LGBTQ, I don't see them stopping, I just see them flowing. And they're constantly being themselves, you know, and I am speaking about the ones that have come out of the closet, that have started the journey. They're very comfortable being with themselves and very comfortable just flowing between the two. There's no cutoff. Does that resonate at all with you, Brian?
Well, there are a lot of people who are underneath that acronym umbrella, and we're all really different from one another. I was thinking that people who are identifying as non-binary today probably would really identify with what you were saying, because they see themselves as gender fluid or gender queer. But I'm fascinated by just the whole concept of where do these gifts of vision come from? How much of it is the divine feminine? How much of it is about having access to that? But then that begs the question, why are the people who were the spokespersons for the major religions, at least that we are aware of today, that we practice today, all men? And were they gay men? And if they had been living in a different time, could they have more easily identified themselves as sexually fluid? Are you? Am I so far down the rabbit hole that you're a little afraid to come?
For me, and going to the first question in terms of where do these gifts come from? My gifts, I believe, are my soul gifts. I think they are enhanced by my ancestral lineage too. Both sides of my parents have some kind of gift. But these gifts don't work unless I have balance between the feminine and masculine. So it's not the feminine, it's not the masculine, it's them coming together that allows me to be in my potential. What
do you think, Leah? Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's why I felt like what I'm doing when I do my work is like switching left brain, right brain. It's but I feel like it's not necessarily the divine feminine is my right brain. I agree that my gifts come from both the divine feminine and the divine masculine in harmony, because they both have I would say like their function or their focus. I typically see the divine masculine as, the supportive, holding the structure so that the divine feminine can then create, holding that space. And then the divine feminine I see as like this the swirl of energy that creates within that structure, I guess is the way that I see it. And so the two together, when I'm in my work, is what makes it I think what makes it work for me is that if I had too much of one or the other, I probably wouldn't be able to do the work that I do, because I would either be like all over the place if I was just in the divine feminine and without any boundaries or structure. I would be communicating with all these different spirits and being overwhelmed, and I can't do that. And that's one of the things I had to learn, is that as I got older, I have to have some boundaries so that I'm not constantly in that in that unseen world. I have to live, I have to function as well. So for me, that is how it works, I think, or how I'm able to make it work.
Do you both believe that all souls have this the access to the same gifts?
Yes.
Everyone could be a medium?
I think we all it is our divine right to be able to tap into that wisdom, to that love. How we do it is uniquely us. So it's almost like, there's this well. We all have access to the well. How we get to the well is our path.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I believe that everyone has the ability. It's just that some people have spent lifetimes working with it to, to be in this lifetime, to be comfortable, to be working with it the way that Hayley or I do, is probably because, we've done it over God knows how many lifetimes, that we've worked it in different, maybe different religions, different capacities, different ways. So I think it's, similar to any skill, maybe, like, I probably could be really good at playing the piano. But even if I spent all day, every day practicing it, I'm probably not going to be a Mozart. You know what I'm saying? It's like I do believe that people come in with their natural gifts that they're going to explore in that lifetime. And so I feel like, yeah, I'll be able to play the piano, and but I probably wouldn't ever be as good as Mozart. So it's like, to me, it's like it comes from, I do believe that everyone has the energy within them, the awareness within them, to definitely, receive their own guidance, receive their guidance and direction for their own life.
What do you think, Brian?
Well, it's, I think that we're differently gifted, a lot based upon well, if you believe in the migration of the soul, then because of the journey that we've been on for centuries, also because of our DNA. I think that, biology plays a big role in our skills. But what fascinates me, Hayley, sister Janine Gramick's coming for dinner tonight. Right?
She is?
Yeah. So she was on our program, Hayley, Catholic, heterosexual woman. And when Hayley and I interviewed her, she's been working on gay ministry for 40 some years. Wow. I met her when I was 26, and I'm 73. I think she's 77 now, 78. But when we had her on the program, she talked about her spiritual practice, praying every morning, right, Hayley? And a lot of people, Buddhist practices to meditate. I listened to Hayley's interview with you, Leah, yes. Where you talked about the sphere of light, that you bring through you from, from the top of your all the way through, and we all have created or had created for us different words to express the same truth, right? Janine is plugging into the divine through the words that she learned growing up Catholic that she held on to. Right. Leah, you and I grew up Catholic, and we've abandoned a lot, but I've come back to believe in the gifts of the Holy Spirit, and so I believe, as Hayley said, that there is this well, and as you said, Leah, it's about love, right? But that if if somebody's a medium and they keep getting messages from higher power, it's got to be the same message, because they aren't higher powers because they have different messages, right? They discovered love in their life. I mean, and so that's their message to us. And the challenge is just to find the words to help people where they are, right? And not adopt, as you said earlier, Leah, or I guess in the other interview, they don't have to believe that you're a medium in order for them to get gifts from you. They don't have to buy into it. They don't have to use your language in order for you to help them understand that they're on a human journey as a spiritual soul, and that the way that they're going to find harmony and peace in their life is to attach to the love that's in them and is outside of them. Does that make sense to you both?
Totally.
It does. And I think it makes a great point too, that I think sometimes people fall into the trap of things being mutually exclusive, that I believe this and everything is this, and that's it. And I think the beauty of what you're saying is because we all share different gifts. I mean, I work differently than Hayley does. I work differently than a lot of different people. It's that you don't have to give up one thing for another. You can work with them together. You can they go together because like you said, they're based in the love, the light energy, the divine energy. So that's why we have lots of different spiritual teachers and spiritual practices, and that might be a good fit for you, and then others might not be a good fit for you. But it doesn't mean you have to just one thing your whole life and that's it. That's the only focus. And that's what I think is good, and why I continuously try to learn and connect with different types of people as well, and learn about what their beliefs are and what their journey. Like you said, coming back to the gifts of the Holy Spirit, I totally get that. I get what you're saying. And I'm like, yeah, it's different from what you were taught to when you learn it on your own through a variety of teachers, whether it's a book or a class or in person.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to circle back to Brian's question earlier about sort of these great masters, Jesus, Buddha, mostly Muhammad, Shiva, all being male figures. And I think, going into sort of touching the many different teachers that we had and the many different resonations. First to you, Leah, what are your thoughts around why God is a man and why Jesus, Buddha, Allah, Shiva, all of them seem to be like those great teachers, the great masters that many people follow are man figures?
Well, it's my belief that a lot of that is some of our more, I wouldn't call it modern thinking, but maybe patriarchal thinking from the last several thousand years. If you look at ancient Egypt, if you study ancient Egypt, there's this thing they call the incredible shrinking woman, which is really interesting. And the early statues of ancient Egypt, the pharaoh and the wife were completely the same size statue. They were huge, enormous, outside the pyramids, and they were that. And then as thousands of years have come by, they call it the incredible shrinking woman, because then Pharaoh's here and his wife is getting smaller and smaller until the point where I think the most modern one, that his wife is sitting on the throne and she's like at his feet, she's like this big. So I feel like it's not that, I don't feel like we were taught the truth, I guess is what I was saying. I feel like there was as much power with the divine feminine, with Mary Magdalene, for example, as there was with Jesus, but the stories got changed over our modern thinking, our patriarchal thinking over the years, and our teaching, where it's not that they weren't there. The women were definitely there, and they were very much a part of what was happening. It's just that the society, will say, couldn't allow that truth to be told.
Right. Jesus couldn't have had 12 women apostles, because he would have lost all credibility with the rabbis, and he was challenged anyway with this message by the rabbis, but it would have been impossible to have had that happen. And the culture allows men to rise to positions where they have a bullhorn, a megaphone, they get to write. What they write is considered important. So that's why in order to really embrace it, I believe that a lot of them really tapped into their feminine.
I think also, yeah. Carry on.
That's where truth is for me. Yeah.
I think that there were also some very, to Leah's point, I do believe Jesus was a man, and I think Jesus was divinely timed in that point in time because people listened to men then. The message came through a man because that's what people listened to. But I think too, Jesus's greatest teachers were women. His grandmother Anna, huge energy, huge energy. Mother Mary was a huge energy. Mary Magdalene was a huge energy. So it's just again, it wasn't just Jesus and God. There were, Jesus was taught and Jesus was supported by some hugely important and massive energies that were just as big as him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
And for people who can't get that, who think, oh God, listen to them, they're off on their feminist, right?
A woohoo box.
Yeah.
Right. So from my life experience, I believe that not only are we supposed to experience love, but that that includes service. Service to others is part of our life calling. And in our service to others, we have to help them understand things in words that they can get, right?
Mm-hmm.
In examples that they can understand and follow. And so we have to be loose in the saddle and switch things up according to the need of the person we're working with.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I think, part of the hero's journey is coming to that realization that life is about service. Love is service. And first it's service to yourself and then to others. And,
Mm-hmm.
In my journey, I've, gone through this metamorphosis where it was like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Thinking it's something very unique. And I had to figure it out and perfect it towards, oh, it's just love. Oh, I can be in service anyway as long as I'm in love. So it's sort of like almost simplifying it to service and love, which then makes it very complex because those can have so many different avenues and shades and paths.
And we learn from the people we service.
We do.
I mean, Leah, the people with autism with whom you work have taught you lessons that now neither Hayley nor I could teach you.
Exactly. In fact, one of my biggest lessons was from a dear friend of mine who passed away years ago. But when I first met her, that was how I met her, was that as I was looking at her, we were in an airport, and the spirit of her son, who had severe autism, was talking to me and telling me about her, and he was saying, I came here to teach her about love, about unconditional love. And so I was learning from him as well. And it was just an incredible experience because yes, it was very clear to me that that's why he was in her life and maybe, in a lot of people's lives as well. Do that was to say, you know what, I'm going to come in to this lifetime. I'm not going to conform to any of your rules. I'm not going to do what you want me to do. I'm not going to say that the little white lies to make you feel comfortable. I'm just going to say it as it is. I'm going to lay it on the line, and you still have to love me anyway. and that, I think, is a profound lesson for many of us.
It's huge because often parents' initial reaction to finding out a child is gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender is to freak out that, this is not what I planned. This is not, this is not the story that I was writing for myself. But they come to learn that this experience expanded their story beyond anything they ever imagined it could be. And they experience levels of feeling that they never imagined were possible, because they have this card dealt to them. It's in their hand and they have to play it.
Very much. It sounds very similar to parents that I've spoken to who have children on the spectrum. The same thing. I thought, this was the child I was going to have, and then what happened? I got something, entirely different. But and it does. Some people don't handle it well, as I'm sure know from your community as well. Sometimes the parents don't handle it well and shut down even more, and sometimes they grow and learn and expand and learn about their own capacity for love.
Interesting that love's lessons are sometimes the hardest.
Yes.
Well, the best lessons are the hardest ones, that in my life, when things are going great, you're not, you can sleepwalk. But when things are challenging, you need to wake up. And you need to be at your best in order to respond to it. And when it's over with, you think, I never would have known that. I never would have learned that. I never would have known that I had the capacity to respond to it.
Right.
Yeah. It becomes non-negotiable.
Yeah. So give me your best shot. What do you got? What do you got next for me?
Right. Just really the hero's journey, like Hayley was talking about. It's like you confront this challenge. You're taken out of your comfort zone. You're confronted with this challenge or this conflict that you have no idea how to deal with, and but you figure it out. And the way you figure it out is the journey.
Yeah.
That can come out on the other side. Yeah.
And I would use plural too, because I believe that we have a hero's journey, but when it's completed, there's another one and another one and another one.
All right.
Yes. That we get called out of our comfort zone, and you think, wait a second, I've spent, look what I did, look what I accomplished.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's great. But we have more need for you. So.
That's true. Yes.
One of the things Leah and I talk about, we're like, as you move along the hero's journey, do those lessons become almost easier to manage and handle? They may not be, look easy, but your experience of them is easier because our hearts are more open to surrendering, more open into, I know what this is, I know how to do this, get me through it. But we do often speak about like, please be the hard lessons. Can we just say we've done them and now we're figuring out the easier way of getting through these lessons?
Right.
We have a few minutes left. I don't know, Brian, if you had one last question.
No, just to say to Leah, it was a delight to have you in the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about our conversation is how you have combined this career of working with people who are autistic and your work as a medium. And I'm sure that there's overlap constantly between the two, that one feeds the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. It was a pleasure to be here with you as well and to meet you finally.
Leah's heard a lot about you, Brian.
Yes, I have.
Well,
good, I hope.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Leah, for being with us today, and had an awesome time. And it's so nice that I'm seeing you again.
Yes, thank you, Hayley. It was wonderful to see you too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Brian.
Leah, when Hayley puts this up, there'll be links to how people can get in touch with you, and
great.
And you can use this, any way you like.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it very much. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
You too.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.